everybody, we're finally there. The very last budget old school deck tech. And this time we're finally going to do the white deck. And this is going to be the last in that series of budget decks. And it's been an interesting run. I've really enjoyed doing all these budget deck designs and trying to prove to both myself and to the rest of the world that you don't actually have to have a huge wallet to both compete in old school and actually have fun in old school. And so the whole goal was to design decks that were as cheap as possible, but since the dual lands, like all of them are so expensive, I made a decision right off the start. I was gonna just focus only on decks that were like monocolored to just prove that each of the colors have the bolts and the nuts and the pieces that they need to build something viable that can stand on its own without having to go even, forget Power 9 and stuff, like not even having to go to like dual lands and like the really expensive cards in each set, right? White doesn't have to use its moats. Blue doesn't have to use mana drains. Black doesn't have to use Nether Void in the Abyss. You can avoid some of these really expensive cards and still have a viable deck in old school, which speaks very well for the format. So we're going to get into that in just a second. But I have an exciting announcement to make, actually. So if you guys might notice the number of subscribers I got on the channel, it's getting real close to 1K. So I know everyone does it, but it's a neat idea. I'm going to do a 1K Q&A. I'm going to just take a bunch of questions if anyone has any, and then if I get enough to be worthy of a video, I'll answer them all on the video, and I'll call out the specific people that asked the question if you wanted me to, and or maybe give like a little shout out or something. So anyways, yeah, think of some neat questions, post them below in the comments, or you can just email them to me because I've now made a public email that I'm willing to share. It's edwinthemagicengineer@gmail.com. Real nice and simple. So just send me a message, and if you have some questions to go into the 1K Q&A video, just throw them in there, send me the email, and we'll get right to it. So without further ado, let's do the video. Here we go. Here's the white budget deck tech. So I'll take the sideboard, I'll move it off to the side here. And starting off, I'm sure you guys aren't surprised about that. You had to guess there's going to be Savannah Lions inside this, right? If this is a white budget deck, and this is one of the best white creatures in all the early Magic that was ever printed, it's got to go in there. And if you guys have been watching my earlier budget deck techs, they've all been like aggressive creature decks with like some kind of disruption or some kind of trick. And I played around with some concepts, but this one ended up being, like, of course, very similar because that's just a strategy that works, and it works on a budget specifically. But this one isn't so much like a specific type of like disruption like the others. This one is, it's actually more of like an Armageddon deck. So, like you might expect, there it is. You got Armageddon inside the deck. And you're actually going to have like a lot of good fast creatures. And so the deck literally plays like an Armageddon deck, but it's got a few more other tricks. So let's go through those. So since this is a budget deck and it needs to get creatures out there quick, and then you want to drop Armageddon by turn 3 or 4, if you can, then you're going to need to have real fast creatures. So the Savannah Lions are obviously in there. The next one's the Benalish Hero. This one, I really went around in circles with a lot of different creatures before I finally landed on them. The reason why I landed on them is, first of all, if I have 7 cards that are all 1-drop, that gives me very likely a turn 1 play. So I can start that pressure clock, right from the get-go, right? That's really important. But the Bands ability, people forget how useful Bands actually is. Don't forget with Bands, when you're attacking, you can basically take the Benalish Hero and band it up with something else. And this, in this case, would be a 3/3 creature. But if you have one of your tricks later, like a Crusade out, then this would be a 5/5 creature that you're swinging with, which is, pretty intimidating, right, to get for like 3 mana. And you can definitely get this guy like 5/5 by turn 3, right? So that's pretty big. But then the other thing about the Bands is, and this is the most important thing, when somebody is attacking you, you can literally take a bunch of creatures that are all blocking, and you can band more than just 2 together and say this is now 1 creature. And especially when you have something like Crusade out, and all of these are getting +1/+1. That's a pretty darn big blocker. So banding with a bunch of small 1/1s ends up being a really powerful ability. And you don't need, the bander itself doesn't honestly need to be that big. It could just band with other things that are themselves big. So the Benalish Hero is a great early play, but it also makes your mid and late game a lot stronger, and that's really important. Now, the next section is, of course, the White Knights. And the White Knights are just, they're such a good creature in white. There's no way these were not going to be in the deck. I mean, you got 2 white drop for a 2/2 with pro black and first strike. That's huge. Just absolutely huge. Now, I didn't put a lot of anti-black in the sideboard because I really didn't honestly feel I needed it, because I had the 3 White Knights, and then I had, the 4 White Knights, and then 3 Order of Leitbur. And he's very similar to the White Knight, where he has pro-black innately, but you can give him first strike. He has 1 less defense, but you can build up that attack power. And so the Order of Leitbur is pretty important because if you keep your mana open when you're swinging and attacking the other guy, you swing with an order, that order, if they try to like block with something that's like a big creature, they better not block the order, because you might pump it up to 4/1 and then make it first strike, and then that big creature just goes down. So with this kind of creature, you can really threaten them and force your opponent into certain defensive plays, and that's a pretty big deal into itself. But notice this is 7 pro-black creatures. So if you go against a black deck, you've already got a lot of main board hate against black. That's one thing. The next thing you've got something that's some pretty main board good defense against control decks packing things like Abyss or Terror or Royal Assassin or many different removals that are actually out there, Pestilence or whatever, right? So 7 Knights main deck is fantastic against black, and so I could definitely like pull back and not have to like board against black so hard in my sideboard, and that allowed me more extra slots. So for this next card, you guys, don't beat me up. Everybody be gentle. Okay, yes, that's not an old school Sarah because the art's different. Cut me some slack, guys. when I built this deck, I had a beta Sarah, but I sold it on eBay earlier this year, and I landed on 3 Sarahs, but I just hadn't actually ordered the last Sarah yet. But I will, and if I face off against one of you guys here pretty soon, I'll have it in there. But anyways, the Sarah Angel. I mean, if you play white and you got creatures, you got to have a Sarah Angel. It's just a really, really good creature. I mean, 4/4 flyer, it's already really good because white doesn't have a lot of flying. But the not tapping to attack, that is enormous. Because Sarah comes out, and oftentimes you're trading back and forth, attacking and blocking with, your creatures and their creatures. But then Sarah hits the board, and they're like done attacking, but you're not. It's so big. But she is 5 mana. And this deck is trying to get its creatures out really fast. So there is a way to play her on turn 2 on this deck. And it does actually happen. I've had a few games, quite a few actually already, where she comes out on turn 2. But most of the time she's going to be a little bit later. But if you have her in your hand, I'll oftentimes try to get her on the table before I drop an Armageddon. So since there's so many small white creatures, the Crusades had to come in main deck. And that's, again, when you've got so many small, and this is adding to all of them cumulatively, and you've got the Benalish Hero that can band all of them together. I mean, that is a really board-winning, game-winning strategy when it comes to creature aggression. This kind of setup, there's nothing that's unique about this. It's been done many times, but it's solid, right? In fact, when I started getting ready to build this white deck, like I mentioned earlier, the choice was fairly easy for a lot of the creatures I wanted to select. The only one that was difficult was the Benalish Heroes, because there's a lot of good white creatures. And the Mesa Pegasus and some others definitely had some solid consideration. But in the end of the day, I decided that the banding was just going to be too big, because it would allow me to take down big fatties like Jazam and stuff on the other side. But even though I guess most of the time I might not need it because of them. So anyways, that's kind of like the creature battles that are going to be going on in this deck. So let's talk about the removal a little bit. Well, being white, it was an easy choice to want to go with 4 Swords to Plowshares. And yeah, you're going to give the other guy life, but removing that creature from the game is a pretty big deal, especially when you're playing against control decks. And for a lot of you guys that are new, my cat just jumped into my lap, see? Hi, cat. This is Esther, the cat. For a lot of you guys that are newer to Magic, for a long time, people didn't consider Swords to Plowshares to be like either the best or one of the best removals in the game, because everybody was very focused on life, gain, and loss. They didn't even want to use like City of Brass because they didn't want to lose any life, and so a lot of people wouldn't build a deck with it just for that reason. But Swords to Plowshares does end up being one of the best removals because the 1 white instant is huge. Any size creature can get blown off the table, and the remove from game is really big a lot of times. So especially when you got like Animate Dead and other recursion and stuff like that. So even though it does have the life gain drawback, that didn't end up removing it from being one of the best creature removals out there. So I did not decide to do 4 disenchants main deck. I decided to just go 3 because I'm not trying to play a long defensive game. I just want to blow up that 1 or 2 lock piece or important item early game so I could just keep that pressure on the opponent. And this is like an Armageddon deck. I only chose to do 3 Armageddons. And again, for anyone who's not familiar, the strategy is real simple. You play out... Oh, here's my little Stormtrooper. This is a USB drive, by the way. Isn't that cool? I got that for Christmas a little while ago. So anyways, you play out your creatures as fast as you can, right? You put a lot of hate on the board, then you just blow up the lands, and then your opponent's stuck there not being able to deal with it very well. I only did the 3 Armageddons, though, because you don't want to draw Armageddon in the first couple turns. You want to draw it a little bit later. And I just find that there's so many times if I had 4 Armageddons in the deck, I would have them right off the bat in my starting hand. And it was just a dead card for quite a while when I needed to get important pieces down onto the board. So there's only 2 Wrath of God main deck. And I wanted some in there because even though, yes, you're going to blow up your own creatures, but if I'm holding a Wrath of God and my opponent is emptying their hand, I might kind of slow play, hold my creatures back in my hand, and let them empty their hand out. But see, there's a balance there. I want to play enough creatures to where they're like, okay, there's a threat. I need to win this creature war. So they play 4 of their creatures or a few of their big guys. But then I'll hold back something big like, another White Knight or like a Serra Angel or something. And then I'll blow the Wrath. As soon as I think that most of the creatures are out of their hand, then you empty your other white cards and then maybe toss a Geddon later. That's kind of the tactic that you use with this deck. Point is, you don't need very many Wraths. You only need a couple of them, especially when you got 4 Plows in there. Now, balance, it's a white deck, dude. This is literally like the best white card, most powerful white card ever printed. I mean, it's restricted with good reason. So, yeah, it fits the deck. I mean, it'll pull you out of a tight spot many times. I mean, whether or not you need to limit their lands, or you need to knock cards out of their hand, or you need to knock their creatures on the board, balance is your ticket. So this is one of my tricks to the deck. So it is a land tax deck. Land tax is just a great card unto itself, but it's especially good in a deck that's going to be blowing up its own lands with Armageddon. And the reason is that after you Armageddon, both people oftentimes are sitting there trying to recover from it. It's not like a perfect situation where you got like a perfect lockout. But I'm not going to Armageddon unless I either have more creatures than the other guy, or if I have like some other mana rocks or something on the table. So I'm going to have some ability to have some recovery. The point is, once I Armageddon, my opponent is going to start playing lands, and then I get to pull all those basics out, which lets me recover faster than him. That's one thing. And the second thing is that it thins your deck out. Because when you have a ton of basic lands, and you're yanking all of them out of your deck, well, guess what? Your next turns, man, you're drawing nothing but spells. So your next turns are very efficient. So a lot of times, I'll literally win the game because, the next turns after I land tax 12 lands out of my deck, all I'm drawing is threats and answers, and my opponent has dead draws with lands, and eventually you get that tiny little bit of advantage, and then you just squeak it through, and then that's it. The game's on its way out. So land tax is really huge. Another thing is, if I'm going to go second, if I'm on the draw, a lot of times I'll drop land tax even if I have a fast creature out. Because what happens is your opponent, I mean, he's either going to be stuck at one land, which he doesn't want, but I can survive that pretty good, you know, with the plows and the fast creatures. Where are they? There you go. And the fast creatures that can all come out. I can survive being on 1 mana pretty well, right? But they're oftentimes not going to be able to. So you make them kind of reserved on their lands, and so then they, okay, fine. They put their land out, and then you pull all these basics out, you know, solidifying your land drops for the next turn, thinning out your deck, and then also kind of giving them a reason to be kind of weary about it, right? Another thing is if you play against a discard deck with like Hypnotic Spectre, Disrupting Scepter, Mind Twist, you got tons of basic lands in your hand, then they're going to yank a lot of dead cards out of your deck, and you just don't really care. Another thing to mention about the land tax is there's times where I'll put a land tax in play, and my opponent could completely lay another land, and maybe he even has better cards in his hand and he could out-pressure me. But I've seen people not. Like, you know, they don't want to activate my land tax so much. They'll hold those lands back in their hand, and thus they'll keep themselves in the early game. And, come on guys, who wins early game better? A deck with all these 1-drop, 2-drop, easy plows, you know, disenchants. I mean, come on, I'll win early game. So if you don't want to play your lands, go right ahead. Or you do play your lands, and then I'm yanking stuff out of my deck like crazy. So land tax was huge to stick in with the Armageddon deck. Now, also, if we're going to go over to the mana sources now, let's do that. I did build this for Eternal Central Rules, so it's got the 4 strip mines. And since I need to have a little bit of acceleration, but this is budget, I needed to have some artifact mana rock power. So I got the 4 Felwar stones and then the 1 soul ring. And admittedly, the Felwar stones, like most of the time, they're not going to get white, right? I mean, maybe someone will play a Plains or a Tundra or a City Brass. But oftentimes, I mean, these just tap for off-color mana. But I do actually have a lot of off-color spells. So it's not like they don't help. And also, I want to have something, if I Armageddon, then I really want to have something to get me like right back into the mix of it a lot faster, right? So the mana rocks end up being pretty darn good. Something else to mention, as I said earlier, I can actually get a Serra Angel out turn 2, right? And this is, yeah, again, this has happened several times. So, you know, your starting draw is basically this, right? And turn 1, you go land, Soul Ring, Felwar Stone. Then turn 2, you untap, and then you get that last land in Serra. Turn 2 Serra, bam, it happens. Budget deck, you know, that's Mox kind of speed, right? But that's out of like, you know, non-super expensive cards, and you wouldn't think it happens a lot, but it actually has. I don't know if my luck has just been crazy. So those are those mana sources, and now you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 planes. And I believe in total I have 24 mana sources. So let's see. So that's 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Yeah, 24 mana sources. So the balance is pretty good. I mean, these are more for mana denial, but you can tap them for mana if you need to. And so they can keep that pressure on. They provide that mana, but then I'm not putting tons of mana sources in my deck. I'm keeping it fairly thin, but I can get by with that because this is because the land taxes for one thing, and then also because this deck has a very low mana curve. So that's the deck. Basically, earn Armageddon with a couple other little tricks. So now maybe we should just go over the sideboard and discuss what's going on with that. Okay, so now about the sideboard. There was lots of ways to go with this sideboard. Like I've mentioned with other decks, you really got to consider the metagame when you're looking at what you're going to put in your sideboard. This isn't the sideboard for everybody. I would strongly suggest if your metagame in your area is different and there's a certain dominant color, then don't start here. Change it around a little bit. But this is like a generic sideboard that's budget. So here, let's go over it. So you saw 3 disenchants main deck. So there's the 4th. If you end up needing lots of disenchant or artifact removal, you got that 4th there, but then you also got the Dust to Dust. Now, I love Dust to Dust, not because it's a sorcery, that part kind of sucks, but it's a 2-for-1. And that ends up being huge in a format like this where, like with a deck like this, you don't have a lot of big card advantage kind of cards. Like you don't have Ancestral and things like that. Anything that will let you get that kind of card advantage really helps. And Dust to Dust, man, it's proven itself 20 Ways to Sunday. So that one's great. Now, if you decide that the creature battles are really intense and your opponent is just dropping tons of stuff, like maybe a green deck with a ton of elves for mana, like your Armageddon strategy is not very effective if they're dropping like mana elves and stuff like that. So if you just need more generic creature destruction, you got 2 more Wraths in the sideboard. Kind of keep that kind of pressure on. Now I had a lot of black main deck. So these next 2 cards, the Karmas, you might not think I necessarily need to have Karma because the anti-black is already really good. And that's true. But there's an awful lot of decks out there that just splash black mana. Like either Bayous or Underground Seas, and like they're not even predominantly a black deck, but they've definitely got those swamps. And Karma is really tough because a lot of decks don't have a lot of ways to deal with it. And there's something else to mention. If you notice, this deck is already playing a lot of enchantments and artifacts that people might necessarily like want to blow up, right? And if one of the overarching themes of a good Magic deck is if you do something like a specific strategy, go a little harder into that strategy. Like if my entire deck only had 2 enchantments, then if the other guy only has like 2 enchantment destructions or a couple of them in it, or 4 of them in his deck, then you've given him his card something to do. So it's kind of like either have no enchantments at all or have several of them. So you're either going to overwhelm their removal, right? Or you're going to have nothing there and give them dead cards in their hand. That's a very powerful deck design strategy. But I was already going into enchantments, so the Karmas are very likely going to like stick around because they're probably going to try to like blow that up, right? So that's something to consider. And another thing is the Circle of Protection reds. And of course, yeah, I mean, you'll hit Sly or Goblin decks or something like that. But it's not so much just for that. There's an awful lot of decks that splash red inside. So, I mean, the pure red decks, yes. But then also decks that just are packing those bolts and those chains and like other things, right? The Cop red is really good for shutting down something that's a really big threat. And again, it's just more enchantments, which kind of like gives them like more targets that they can actually deal with. This next bit, I'm actually really proud of this next bit, and of course, this is old school. I can't claim to be the first guy that did this, but one of the tough matchups with this deck is going against a really good control deck. You notice there was not very much anti-blue in the deck, right? Like a lot of things that are like going to win a counter war or going to be really tough for blue to handle. But remember, what's the main removal that a lot of control decks use these days? Well, it's this. Swords to Plowshares. Swords is easily the most heavily relied on creature removal that's out there, right? And those control decks, like, you know, the deck, oftentimes it uses the Abyss, and the White Knight, he already gets around the Abyss because the protection from black doesn't let the Abyss kill him. And so that's already pretty good against those control decks. But then their other primary tool is Swords to Plowshares, right? So, White Ward. That's what you do. I mean, I could say I put this in the deck to try to go against a mirror matchup, you know, my white creatures versus their white creatures. But in honesty, it's in there for that and for other decks. If I take a Serra Angel and I drop a White Ward on it, you're not going to plow that. And if you have your own Serra Angel, you're not going to be able to block it either, right? You're going to have to find another way to deal with that Serra Angel. So White Ward is basically for the control matchups is the low budget way I was deciding I want to try to protect very specific creatures. Now, these next cards, in the early game of this deck, in game 1, I should say, there wasn't a lot of artifact enchantment destruction, right? I mean, I don't think your opponent is going to be worrying too much about the mana rocks, boarding in a lot of artifact destruction for those. They might be concerned about the land taxes, wherever those went. and, you know, putting something in to blow those up. But even if they did, oftentimes it's kind of like, you know, the enchantment destruction is what they might care the most about. And so if I go into a control matchup, I'm not only going to have white wards I want them to be able to deal with. If they have a lot of black in their control deck, I might put the karmas in. But now I've got a couple books also. And with these Jame Day tomes, these are fantastic because hopefully they didn't board in a ton of artifact or enchantment destruction from game one based on what you saw. Or maybe they if they did, they used it to blow up one of your other early enchantment or artifacts that are on the table. And then I can get some serious card advantage out of this because the game might go really late. And if they're drawing cards, I need to draw cards. So that's kind of the direction I went with that. And the very last card of the sideboard is a Felden's Cane. And the Felden's Cane is in there because there are mill decks in the format. It does actually happen. But I wasn't specifically putting this in just for a mill deck. I put the Felden's Cane in because if we're going pretty long and we've both been dropping tons of creatures and the battle's been going back and forth, if I can put my graveyard back into my library, I not only can prevent myself getting decked, but I can also flesh back up my library with a lot of good, useful spells that are going to be great for doing things. Or maybe if there's that one key card that I really need, you know, goes to the graveyard, I can be able to like put it back into my deck and maybe hopefully draw it again. So it's just basically for a little bit of recovery. Or if the other guy's playing Animate Dead and maybe he wants to get one of my things out of my graveyard or something, you know, no you don't, I'm going to put it back in. And the Felden's Cane, of course, you can play it and keep it in the board until you need it, or you can just play it and crack it, you know, so Disenchant does nothing to this. They're going to have to counter it if they want to be concerned with it. So that's the sideboard, and that's the deck. That is my budget white deck. The play testing I've done with this so far, it's been very good, absolutely. It was basically like, what I didn't expect is how great this did against the Goblins budget deck. It was like, it had that deck's number for sure. And the black deck was an interesting matchup because the black deck would either get his Black Knights out and he would just swing for free through to me, or I would get my Knights out, swing for free through to him, or he'd get an early Spectre out, just knock everything out of my hand real early. So it's like there was, against black, it was funny because there was so many games that were like, it seemed unfair his way or unfair my way, but it just shifted back and forth. The control matchups were definitely tough. I have not, as of this second, play tested this against Stasis yet, but I did play test it against the deck and a few others, and it did honestly great. It was able to put enough pressure on that either I'm going to look at it and say, the deck, this is ready to go against the deck, and just at least have a good game. If not, you know, take it down a couple of matches, which is commendable, you know, for a nice budget deck. Final point I'll make before I go is on the last few videos, people keep looking at the decks I'm posting and saying, oh, that's a real expensive deck. But everyone keeps forgetting, like, no, you guys. You can do Chronicles, you can do 4th edition, you can do revised versions of these cards. I mean, just because I'm sitting here with a Beta Swords, it's a budget deck. Don't buy Beta Swords. Go get a revised and pay a couple bucks for it, right? Go get a revised Soul Ring maybe for $10 or something like that, right? This is a budget deck if you use like the less expensive cards, and it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. Probably the most expensive card in here is, where is it? Probably the land taxes. But I think when I picked mine up just a little while ago, I picked them up for $14 each, and I haven't looked at the prices they're going for now. But that's what I paid for them, like not that much, so I think that's all reasonable. Anyways, everyone, thanks for attending, and I hope you enjoyed this and have a great time with those budget decks. Bye, guys.